Joining us is Stephen Curtis. He's a radiation health physicist, more than 20 years experience with the DOE. He's also been associated with Yucca Mountain for more than 30 years as a subject matter expert, which means he did much better in math than I did. Stephen Curtis, welcome back to the Heidi Harris Show.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate it.
So is this a good sign that the congressmen were hanging around there and kind of getting a firsthand look at it?
Turns out that they've been looking at it before, and they're quite interested in it. The last vote in the House was something like 340 to 70 to put Yucca Mountain out here. So they're very interested in moving this down the road.
You know what frustrates me is that they act as if there's no nuclear waste until we get Yucca Mountain up and running, which is a lie, obviously. And the big concern is some other state is finally going to take it and screw us out of so much money.
Absolutely. There's other states looking at it fairly seriously. No one has committed to it yet, and there's people concerned in every state. But I think the key is just getting a little education about it and trying to reduce the mystery behind it.
Now, the problem is with Yucca Mountain is a lot of politicians obviously don't want to touch this. And every other year, it's an election year for somebody, right? Congress, Senate, whatever. And so it's tough to get anything that catches any steam, especially for the Nevada politicians aren't as important because we have so few of them. But it is an issue.
It's definitely an issue, and there are things to be careful about. But it's important to remember that we've dealt with this stuff for well more than 50 years, and it's well understood. And there's nothing more protected and there's nothing more safety envelope than put around any of the stuff that we deal with. So in that context, it seems very benign to try to move this down the road. And you're right. I think Nevada really needs to take advantage of the economic boon from this.
Now, let's talk about how many places are already storing this high-level nuclear waste around the country.
There's 104 nuclear reactors. Not all of them are active anymore. But once they're decommissioned, the contents of the reactor remain on the site, so including the spent fuel. But most of them are active. There's 99 reactors that are active today that are continually producing spent fuel and storing it on the site, and they do it in something called dry cask storage now because they can't leave it in the water ponds for about 10 years. After that, they have to take it out, and it's much less radioactive then, but still dangerous. And they put it in a concrete cask and store it right on site. And there's 104 places around the country this is active. So
when we're talking about the high-level nuclear waste, would they pull it out of all of those current locations and then bring it all here?
Correct. That's the ideal situation. And what we're trying to convince them to do is to reprocess it. So if you do reprocess it, it gives you a lot of advantages over just storing it for millions and millions of years. And if it's actually a lot cheaper, too. So we're looking at trying to talk to people and answer their questions and sort of allay their fears about this in an effort to move it in the direction of reprocessing and actually new reactor development. We think that's just a better option.
We're speaking with Stephen Curtis. He's a radiation health physicist. Let's talk a little bit about the reprocessing. It was Jimmy Carter, correct, who put the kibosh on the reprocessing many years ago?
Correct. It originated with Gerald Ford, but Jimmy Carter continued it, and they were fearful that somebody would divert plutonium from the separation stream and use that to build a nuclear weapon. And that's a very difficult thing to do, and it's a very difficult thing to do without anybody else knowing about it. So by the time Reagan got in here, he reinstated it, but by that time they were making nuclear fuel by enriching uranium, which seemed to be a more cost-effective way by then. So it's actually okay to do it now, and that was the original way they were going to do it. You take the bad actors out of it, which is only about 3% of the spent fuel, and you sequester those for somewhere around 300 years for them to decay back to background levels. And the rest of the stuff you can actually burn in reactors and make energy with it and new fuel for reactors.
Okay, I'm going to
ask more complicated than that, but that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, I'm going to ask a layperson's question. How do we know that it's okay after 300 years? Obviously, since it's technology hasn't been around.
There's two basic components of the spent fuel that are the major generator of the radiation. Cesium-137 and strontium-90, and they have about a 30-year half-life. So after about 10 half-lives, they'll reduce the radiation content down to about background level. And then you can deal with it as regular low-level spent fuel.
So what is it, Stephen Curtis, that people don't understand, that our politicians don't get about Yucca Mountain and the safety of it? Is it the fact that they just don't want this on their watch? They don't want to be the senator or congressperson who allows this to happen during their watch? Or do they just not understand that it can be stored safely?
Perhaps. It's more of an emotional issue now, I think, not a scientific issue. We'd love to get it back onto the scientific level and discuss it. I mean, there's things to be afraid of with radiation, but people are generally more afraid of radiation than they need to be until they understand more about the basics of how it works and what's dangerous and what's not. And I do think that it is a emotional political issue, and they just use that to, I suppose, make people think that they're protecting them and things are safe, and that's a good thing. But when we talk about economic development, there are some risks to be taken. And if people understand that the risks are very low and the benefits are very high, they might start coming around. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, that's the thing, is that a lot of people don't want to see Nevada as nothing but a nuclear waste dump. And all the folks, the Chamber of Commerce folks, those kind of folks, generally don't want to see the state look like that. I get that. And there's a concern also about transporting it through the state. And they're worried, many people, that it's just going to destroy our economy if this is what we're now known for.
Right, and that's been promulgated now for 30 years, and all the politicians have backed that idea. The truth is, it won't come through Las Vegas. It's easily diverted to other areas and other routes, and most of it comes from the east anyway. So the fact is, none of it will come through Las Vegas. The transportation of it is in very robust containers that are will not break open and not come out in a transportation accident. They're very, very robust. They'll be monitored the entire way. They'll be accompanied by a number of people escorting them, no matter what route they take. So it's hard for me to imagine an accident that would cause any real damage. And so, again, we need to sit down with people and have them go through their worries and cares and talk about it. It's just a lot of politicians aren't willing to do that right now.
No, they're not. Now, what is Donald Trump saying about this? Because he seems to be a little softer on this issue. What has he said lately?
Donald Trump is very much in favor of nuclear power, and he knows that this is the issue that's holding up the next generation of nuclear power reactors coming on board. His interest is very much a national security interest for producing energy in our country and not importing energy any more than we have to. And he knows that when you're talking about green energy or pollution-free energy, nuclear power is much superior to anything like even natural gas is much superior. Nuclear power produces a lot less. So pollution-free energy, we're going to an electric-based economy. Transportation in the next decade, or not decade, maybe in the next generation, will be looks to be more electric cars and self-driving cars and things like that. So we need to generate more electric power, and this is the way to go and bridge the gap. There's nothing wrong with renewables. Those are okay. They're just not cost-effective quite yet, and they need to have a little bit more work. And the volume of area you need to produce renewable energy is large. So there's a real advantage to nuclear, and I think we just need to try to explain that to people.
We're speaking with Stephen Curtis, a nuclear expert. So when it comes to the reprocessing, where would that be done? Would that be done in Nevada, or would that be done someplace else? Well,
we would propose to do it out in what used to be the Nevada test site, the Nevada National Security Site. It sits right next to Yucca Mountain, and they have a long history of knowing how to deal with things nuclear. We were proposing a public-private partnership. There's a piece of the test site that DOE owns that's not exactly on the test site. We could use sort of as an industrial park to interest private enterprise to come in and work with the scientists to produce the next generation of nuclear power and the reprocessing of things that we need to do. I mean, it's well understood, but there are some new processes that are in the prototype stage that need to be worked on a little bit. It'd be ideal to do it out there really far from where anybody lives. And in fact, Nye County is all in favor of this, and
yes,
they're the ones that would be closest.
That's true. They want the jobs. They want the money. All right. Final question. Where does it stand now? I mean, we've got a lot of House members who are favorable to it. What do you think? Would it have to go through the Senate? What chances do we have of this?
The Senate has yet to vote, and they won't bring the vote up until after the election. They've
of course
said that. They are still up on bringing it out here and burying it. So we still have to, as a state, come around and try to convince them to move in the direction of reprocessing and next-generation reactors here in Nevada. But they'd be very amenable to it. I think that would be an easy trade for us to make and to push it in that direction.
Well, I'll tell you what, if they put it to a vote of the people, I guarantee you, if they gave us some kind of money every year, like the Alaska Permanent Fund, I know that's based on something different.
Absolutely, they'd go for it.
Yeah.
It's a matter of just getting them educated a little bit, Heidi.
Yeah, put it on the ballot. Give me a check every December, whatever. You call it the Yucca Fund. I'll take a check. But only people who are born here. That's it. Just kidding.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
which includes you, right?
Yeah, that's right. That includes me and a tiny group of people. All right, Stephen Curtis, Yucca Mountain expert. Thank you for joining me. We'll talk again as events warrant, because hopefully we'll get something done. Because if we don't take it, New Mexico's going to, or somebody, and they're going to get the money, and we're all going to be crying that we didn't.
Absolutely. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm Heidi Harris.